Moving towards domain 2. Domain 2 is asset security. Now, briefly, we have understood that humans is our topmost priority, should be of our paramount concern whenever we want to protect anything, because they are the top assets, right, that we want to protect. What exactly comes next? The next thing that we want to protect is our data. Okay, so in this domain, we are briefly gonna understand about how do we maintain and manage the asset security. Now, first of all, what are the things that we're going to see in this domain? It's relatively short domain. It's not going to take much time. A lot of things which we're going to see is kind of an overlap from domain 1. So it is going to be a quick revision for us. So we're going to understand what all are the sensitive data. How do we define sensitive data? Okay, then we also know how do we define an asset classification, how do we classify the data there, then what kind of security controls we want to implement. Then data is at several states, so data could be in motion, could be at rest, could be in use. How do we protect those? All right, then handling the information and assets, how do we handle the information and assets, and what all are the various data protection methods. All right, let's try and understand how do we define sensitive data. What exactly is a sensitive data for us as an organization, as an individual? So the first category is personally identifiable information, or PII. Now, any information which is going to give you an insight about an individual, right? An information which is related to an individual is called as an personally identifiable information. If you, such as name or your social security number or Aadhaar card or PAN number, date of birth, phone numbers, these all are the personally identifiable information. Okay, so any information which could be used to identify any individual, that could be classified as a personally identifiable information. All right, the next one we have is protected health information. Now, protected health information, or PHI, it is a any health related information associated to an individual. Okay, so like we saw earlier in our previous domain, that in United States we have an act, we call it as HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, that our health information is protected. Okay, so it is applicable to your healthcare provider like your hospitals, clinics, and even to your health insurer. So if you take any health insurance plans, so they also have to ensure that you go through, that you maintain and manage the PHI data. Okay, and the third category we have on the sensitive data is called as a proprietary data. Now, proprietary data refers to any organization's confidential information, or any information which is going to give their market competitors some kind of an edge over them. So if you end up losing this proprietary data or confidential data, what kind of impact be able to see? So let's say your market competitor might have access to this information, they might have an edge over you. Okay, so these information related to any kind of a mergers and acquisition, any recent product that they want to launch, even the intellectual properties, the intellectual properties that we saw earlier, trade secrets, patents or copyrights, they all are the part of the proprietary data. Okay, so it is very important that we need to protect it. So a lot of breaches, even the espionage that we discussed, that economic information, even your a lot of APTs is your advanced persistent threat. Now, advanced persistent threat I'm going to discuss shortly, not shortly, but yes, in domains 5, I guess. But yes, till then I would like you to hold that thought of what exactly APT is. APT is a kind of threat which is done on a organization or a country. So we're going to discuss about APT in detail in domain 5. Okay, so these APTs are done to steal some kind of financial information or any sensitive information there. Okay, so 3 high level categories of the sensitive data: PII, personally identifiable information; PHI, protected health information; and the proprietary data. Now, how do we classify the data? Now, we understood the significance of why data classification is necessary in any organization, because based on the data classification, we would be able to choose what kind of security control we might want to implement in order to protect the data, because not every data qualifies to be protected with a similar kind of control. Okay, we agree with this. Now, the government and the private sector, they both have a different kind of classification. Government has their top secret, secret, confidential, and unclassified. Top secret being highest, and unclassified being the least sensitive. And in the private sector, we have confidential, private, sensitive, and public, where confidential being the highest and the public being the least sensitive. So anything that could cause grave damage could be called as either top secret or confidential. Anything that's going to cause critical damage to your organization is going to be called as a critical and private. Anything that could be of serious damage is confidential and sensitive, and something of no damage is going to be public or unclassified. Now, in a lot of organizations, this can be customized. This could not, you might call something else in your respective organizations, but yes, this is just from a IC square perspective. Okay, managing sensitive data. Now, how do we manage sensitive data? So whenever we have access to any sensitive data, our objective is to make sure that we protect that sensitive data. Okay, so the first objective is to make sure that we mark it. Now, marking sensitive data simply means we are gonna label it. Now, data labeling is different from data classification. Now, what do we have? A classification. Classification is your top secret or secret, or even the confidential. Okay, now labeling has more information just than classification. So a data label would include your data classification, your who's the data owner for it, and what is the use of it, and like retention period and such things. I mean, much more in. So classification is just a part of the labeling. They all makes the data label. So data label is the superset or a higher set of the information available. So it is very important that we mark the information, because if, let's say, a very basic example I'm going to give you, that let's say there are the backup tapes, right? The backup tapes are being shipped to offsite location from primary site to the secondary site. The backup tapes are being shipped either through public transport, not public transport, but any kind of courier services or anything. Now, the person or the people who are receiving these backup tapes at the offsite location, they need to store it into some secure location. But if they doesn't have any kind of labeling on it, how do they need to make sure that which information needs to be secure in a better way, or which information needs to be secured in a, like, it is okay if we keep it not so in a secure zone, right? So a very kind of similar situation, that why do we exactly need data classification? Just to make sure that we would be able to identify what kind of security controls we need to implement it. All right, so that is why marking and labeling is also important. Then handling sensitive data. Now, handling sensitive data, let me get rid of this drawing here. Now, handling sensitive data is to make sure that we are protecting the data through an entire life cycle, right? There is a life cycle of the data which we're going to discuss in domain 7, but just to give you a brief overview. So data is created, classified, then stored, shared, I mean, shared, used, stored, and archived and deleted. Okay, so just a high level, this is what happens to any kind of data. So we need to make sure that we handle the sensitive data in each and every phases of it, of the life cycle. Okay, so making sure that a data, once it is created, until the time it is destroyed or deleted, it has to be properly protected, like secure transmission, even the transportation of it whenever we are shipping from primary site to offsite location, storing into a secure manner. Okay, I'm going to give you one situation just from a CSP mindset, because the situation that we were discussing, it just brought me to one of the questions. So let's say you want to ship your data from primary site to a secondary site, right? And you want to make sure that protect that tapes or the backup tapes, whatever you're shipping, from any unauthorized access. What is the best method that you would choose here? Option A is to ensure that you have placed security guards while shipping it. Option B, to make sure that those backup tapes are kept inside the cage. Option C, those backup tapes are encrypted, right? Encryption. So make sure that whenever, and this is something you have to keep this mindset throughout the CSP, that whenever you want to protect your data from any unauthorized access or protect the confidentiality of the data, encryption is always the best method. Now, if you want to put security guards, it is going to give you some liability because you also need to protect the life of those security guards, right? Then if you're gonna place it inside the cage, cages can be broken, they can even be melted, so that is something easily can be taken care of. But if your backup tapes are encrypted, even if it gets stolen, no one can make use of it, right? And which brings us to our next topic, which is storing sensitive data. So whenever we are going to store our sensitive data, it is very important that we store it in using proper encryption, proper security like AES 256. And it is also important that we do not keep our backup tapes or magnetic tapes in a area which has some kind of a magnetic field around it. Otherwise we might end up getting our data corrupted or even deleted, because placing your magnetic tapes in a magnetic field, high magnetic field, it creates or generates a process which we call it as degaussing. We're going to discuss degaussing shortly. Okay, so it is important that we or even like storing the data in a right environment, the right physical environment, like not high humidity, because a high humid environment might get those devices corroded, corrosion can occur, and a right temperature. Okay, so these are the things that we need to make sure that we protect it. And then destroying the sensitive data whenever we do not need it. If the data is no longer needed, it is very important that we delete it. Okay, now before we look into the various ways and aspects of how we can delete this data securely, let's try and understand what all are the various states of the data. Okay, what all are the various states of the data. Now data on a high level could have three states. A data could be in motion. In motion means a data is traveling, it is in transit. Now what all are the things that we see in data in transit? Like your email communication, right? Even your websites. So anything in at any situation where your data is at movement from one place to another, that is called as data in motion. Okay, so whenever we are gonna, how do we protect the data in motion? By using encryptions like TLS 1.2 or accessing through VPNs, right? Ensuring that we have a trusted certificates or proper protections like your using SSL certificates, right? These are the various ways we can protect our data in motion. How do we protect data at rest? Now before we understand how do we protect it, let's understand what exactly is data at rest. Now data at rest is said when a data is not moving, so any data which is at the storage level, so like your database, your file server, or any even like your SharePoints or shared drive, these all are part of your data at rest. So data at rest technically means when a data is at rest position and it is not moving. Okay, so how do we protect those? So we need to make sure that we encrypt the data using AES 256. We need to mask it. Now masking the data simply means using some methods to conceal the real data. So good example of masking you would be able to see in your credit card statements or even in your phone bills. In your credit card statements, not your entire credit card number is revealed. So let's say this is the first four digits. The next 8 digits would be hidden and the last 4 digits would be visible or something like that. So this entire process is called as here is masking. So data is masked. Okay, and then we have approaches like tokenization. So let me briefly talk about what tokenization is. So tokenization is when you replace any sensitive information with a non-sensitive information. Okay, those non-sensitive information in this case is called as tokens. All right, so what happens? So let's say this is your database that holds a sensitive information. Okay, so in a tokenization process you would have another database which is going to access the, which has the details about the tokens. Okay, so these databases, the data which is stored in the database, it is going to be replaced with the any kind of non-sensitive information. So this is your token database. and this is your original database. Okay, so let's say your sensitive information is someone's name, let's say Prashant. Okay, it will be replaced by some token, as in like it could be anything, 54321x, anything. This would become a non-sensitive information. Okay, so when someone who is unauthorized to access this, okay, until unless they do not authenticate properly, so someone who is unauthorized, they only would be able to see this token information. Someone who is authorized, they would be able to see a right information. So tokenization simply means replacing sensitive information with a non-sensitive element. Okay, now if you have hard time understanding tokenization, I'm going to give you a very general example here. So whenever you go to any hotel or any, sometimes it's in malls as well, you must have understood heard the concept of valet parking. So what exactly happens in valet parking? You go into a hotel, you give your car to the person, to the valet guy. The valet guy, in return, what the valet guy gives you? It gives you some kind of a ticket, a receipt that you have submitted your car, right? You hand over the keys and you simply go inside a hotel, you have a good food, or even your mall, you go and do a shopping and you come back. Now once you come outside, what exactly do you hand over to the valet guy? The token that it gave you. You do not simply say that I had a blue car, I had this, I had that. You simply give him the token, and the token is used to identify what exactly is your, which car you have given. Okay, the similar concept here, the tokenization. So this is how the process happens here in the tokenization as well. So someone who is authorized, who have the right person to access the database, they would be able to see the data, otherwise they won't be able to access it. All right, these are the few, and tokenization is an approved method from a PCI standards. So in PCI, someone who wants to hide any sensitive data, they can use tokenization, a process called as tokenization. Is the concept of tokenization clear? All right, then we have data in use. Now data in use is said when a data is actually being processed or accessed currently. That particular data is called as in use. A very common example of data in use is your random access memory. So RAM is whenever you want to search anything or whenever you want to access anything, that initial set of data is already always available in your RAM, right? So that is where data in use is there. How do we protect, how do we secure the data in use? We need to make sure that whichever memory location where those sensitive data is being processed, that has to be properly isolated. Okay, now the concept of isolation is something we are going to discuss in domain 3 when we're going to talk about security architecture, right? So I'm just going to give you a quick glimpse of how does the isolation looks like. So let's say this particular process has been allocated, this area has been allocated to this process, this area has been allocated to this process, process 1, process 2. It is important these processes only run into the given area, in a confined area, so that they do not accidentally read or write anything on someone else's memory location. If we are successfully able to make sure that these processes run in their own confined area, it means we can call it as these processes are isolated. Okay, preparing you all for these concepts which we are going to read in domain 3. All right, so these are the few states of data and how do we protect it. Now, at the end of the life cycle of the data, when it needs to be destroyed, it is important that we destroy the data in a proper manner so that it cannot be read by any other party, any other entity. Okay. Now we are going to discuss few methods that is used while destroying the data. Okay. And this is something important that we need to understand. The first method is erasing. Erasing simply means deleting any file. What we do here in our systems, like we delete the file, we shift delete the file, right? Now these deleting is not something that it is permanently getting rid. The images of these files are still available on your hard drive, so data is just being overwritten. Okay, so whenever you delete any file, so that particular sector becomes empty and a new data is being overwritten on that, so that data still can be retrieved. Okay, so there are a lot of data recovery procedures. So if you just end up deleting all the files from your hard drive, you can simply go to people who have necessary tools and equipments, so then they are able to recover your data. All right, the next method is called as clearing. Now clearing means it is also called as overwriting. Okay, now overwriting means what exactly we do in overwriting. So let's say there is a data which is called as, let's say, 1010110001. Okay, now this particular data will be overwritten by zeros or ones or anything, any random bits. Okay, till the time it is not readable. So this particular process is called as clearing or overwriting. Okay, so it is said, theoretically it is said, that overwritten data can still be retrieved in labs using some intensive tools. Okay, so you do not want to overwrite your sensitive information. Any unclassified data which you think that is of not so severity, that can be overwritten, so that even if it is retrieved, even if it is recovered, it is not going to cause us any loss or impact, because the data which we are overwriting itself is a public data or a unclassified data, so it is not going to cause us any harm. Okay, the next form of data deletion method or removing data method is called as purging. Now purging of data is something which we commonly used in our organizations as well. Okay, it is an intense form of clearing. So clearing we saw, overwriting, right? And in more intense form of clearing is called as purging. Okay, so it prepares the media means the device which was hosting that data. It prepares the media to be reused in a less sensitive information. Okay, so something which is being used, so let's say we had unclassified data or even the confidential data or a sensitive data here. In the private sector we have a sensitive data, right? Now the media which was storing the sensitive data, that will be purged, right? So that we can get rid of the sensitive data. Now that media could be reused to store any other information as well. All right, that can be done. Now data is something non-recoverable. If we purge anything, data is said to be non-recoverable using any known methods. There is no as such methods which is known to us which can recover purging. So purging is good to do, right? It is absolutely one of the approved methods that a lot of organizations follows whenever we want to purge any data. So once the data surpasses its retention period, it is important that we purge the data. Okay, so it is important that we understand what exactly purging is. Purging is the intense form of clearing. All right, however there is an exception in purging. We do not want to purge any highly classified data, an information which such as like top secret. Okay, that should remain top secret until unless it changes its data classification, it becomes unclassified or it becomes secret. So we are not going to purge anything which is top secret, because we do not want to take even the slightest of the chances that that data could be recovered. Okay, so purging is an intense form of clearing. Okay, and we want to do it, we want to use the media can be reused in the less sensitive information, but not something which is storing or processing the top secret information. So any highly classified data should not be purged. Okay, now then we have sanitization. Now sanitization is a process to remove the data, ensuring that data cannot be recovered at any cost. Now if you are sanitizing the data, right, the data cannot be recovered at any cost. So we can also call sanitization as that we are destroying the media without physically destroying it. Okay, we are destroying the media without physically destroying it. Common examples of sanitization is like your factory reset. When you do it on your phones, whenever you do factory reset, it wipes out everything and it gives you a warning that it cannot be recovered at any cost. You must have done, or you must have seen at least, that there is an option of factory reset in on your phones. So whenever you are doing the factory reset, it is going to sanitize everything. It is not going to leave even a slightest trace of any data that you might have stored on your phone memory, not on the clouds, on the phone memory. Okay, another example is your crypto shredding. Now crypto shredding is one of the methods we destroy the data on the clouds. So what we do is we encrypt the data, right? We encrypt the data and we destroy the encryption keys. If the encryption keys are destroyed, the data cannot be recovered. All right, so that is what another method of sanitization is. So it is also a new term that you would want to know, crypto shredding. Crypto shredding is encrypt the data and destroy the encryption keys. It is one of the concepts that we use in cloud security. Whenever we want to delete the data in cloud, because in cloud we do not own the data is not with us, right? It is with a vendor, a service provider. So what is the best method that we can do is, so that we can encrypt the data. Encryption can be at our end, and we need to destroy the encryption keys, because once the encryption keys are destroyed, you cannot recover the data. All right, so sanitization is the process to remove the data, so that it cannot be recovered at any cost. Okay, then we have declassification. Now declassification is whenever you want to declassify any information. Okay, so let's say the classification has its age. It means a data at a time it was top secret, it is not necessary that it will remain top secret throughout its lifetime. There would be some kind of data. So I gave one of the examples, I think, I'm not sure if it was in this class or one the earlier batch. So the cases related to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the freedom fighter we had, there were a lot of conspiracy theories that he was seen, I mean, the world knows that he died in a plane crash in 1945 in Taipei, but there were a lot of instances where people claim that they saw him. A lot of information was investigated by CIA and even the KBG and a lot of other security agencies, and they have classified that information. In early 2000 they have declassified it, right? They have declassified, it means it is available to general public. You can simply request for that information and you would be able to get access to that information. Now that declassification means that once that information has been revealed or made it as unclassified, that the media that was used to store that top secret information, it could now be used for any in an unclassified information, in an unclassified environment. Were you able to understand what did it mean? Final stage of any life cycle of the data is your data is destroyed, right? Now once the data is destroyed, and if you want to make sure that the media which was hosting that data, that also needs to be destroyed, that falls under the destruction of the media. Okay, now this is the most secure method of sanitization, which means we are actually physically destroying the media. Okay, so that once the media is physically destroyed, there is by no means, I mean, if the media destruction is done properly, by no means the data could be recovered. Most of the methods that is included in the media destruction is incineration. Incineration is passing it through the high heat and fire so that everything gets melted and corrupted. Crushing it, shredding, disintegration, and dissolving using chemicals. If we are using these things, then it means we are destroying the media. And once the media is destroyed properly, it means the data inside the media cannot be recovered at any cost. All right, okay, with this we completed domain 2.